Next, I'm going to talk to John Dick. He is the secretary of the Anderson Library Model Railroad Club, and as I understand, one of the senior members, not by age, but by longevity of the club. When did you get hooked up with the club up here, John?
I came in about 1996 time frame. An old friend of mine that I found out was involved with the trains up here. We got to talking one day and he encouraged me to come up and see what they had. I was also looking at that time to find someplace to maybe develop and run my circus train, which I'm a circus model builder. I belong to a couple of organizations and everything, but as you can see and have looked around the layout and everything, you'll see some inferences to circus living. So, but I got into three-rail circus trains by accident and then overloaded. Lowell Aldridge, who was one of the individuals that I was talking about, came in the beginning, back in the early 80s with this, and he was in N-scale. He worked for me at the factory, in fact, and we used to talk trains years ago. So in any event, he came up and he had an area where he had N-scale. The rest of us had HO. We've done a lot with it over the years. But in the early days and in the planning, there wasn't a lot went into how it would be 10 years, 15 or 20 years down the road and what could be done with the layout. And each individual kind of had their own idea and a lot of their own things went in it. It wasn't a compilation of ideas, it was a lot of individual ideas. Many of the individuals that I came in with are gone now, and we're constantly looking for new blood, trying to get people interested in railroading. One of the gentlemen that come up on Wednesday night runs three-rail. I used to run HO on Wednesday nights with my brother, and we would operate for 2 and 3 hours and have as many as 7 different trains running at the same time, all on the HO layout. What we have up here, as I mentioned, we have N-scale, which is the smallest of the ones available to us, and it has its own small layout. Then you have the large HO layout, and then there's an S-gauge layout on top of the Lionel equipment. So you get a little bit of variety from everything.
Okay, now, as I understand it, you're one of those guys that build some of your own wagons, sets, and that kind of thing to scale on a layman's level. For those of us that love trains but maybe don't understand, how does one even get started building something to scale? Do you have gauges you use?
Well, each HO gauge is a little larger than 1/8 of an inch to the foot. It's 187. Of course, Lionel or three-rail O gauge is 1/4 inch to the foot. So you decide what gauge you like to build in, what you want to operate in, what you want your collection to be, and maybe you get a little crazy like some of us, and we got a little bit of everything. When I was growing up as a young boy, and I had 2 brothers, and all 3 of us were into trains, and my dad liked trains. My dad was, during the war, was a switch tower operator here in town at what some folks would recognize as the old Gridley Tower. And but he enjoyed trains. We had a big 3-rail layout at our home out on Mountains Road, and I got interested in building things. I built a roundhouse, I built a coaling tower, I built a big truss bridge, and everything else for that layout. And I enjoyed scratch building so much that I then became interested in HO. And a gentleman by the name of Ed Belknap in town, who was the Big 4 ticket agent for the New York Central Railroad, was into model interurbans. And when he saw some of the work that I was doing, he asked me if I would like to build an interurban for him, which I jumped at the chance. I was in high school at the time, and I worked on that for several weeks, put everything together, and he liked that, so I built several of them for him. Before it was all done. And I got interested in HO because you could be individualist in that. You didn't have to follow a pattern. Even today, I'll scratch build, kit bash. Kit bash means you'll take pieces from this and pieces from this and put it together and make something out of it that you can't buy in a kit. And there's some things that you can't scratch build. So you do a compilation of all of that, and you do it in structures, you do it in rolling stock. Like me in circus, I build circus wagons, and I build a lot of my circus wagons from photographs. And if you look at a photograph and you ask how do you determine what size or something, for instance, if you look at a circus wagon and it's a baggage type wagon, you know that most of the time the rear wheels on it are 4 foot in diameter and the front wheels are 3 foot in diameter. So from that and your scale device, you can dimension the whole wagon. And you can sketch it if you like, or you can just put it in your head and say, this is how I'm going to work with it and see where it goes to.
If there's, let's say there's a young man or young lady out in the community that has an interest in this kind of a hobby, do any of the members make themselves available to sit down with them and discuss how to get started? And
We have, when up here, as far as going out and making contact, no, we haven't done that. Now, myself, I belong to another railroad club out of Dayton, Ohio, and we exhibit through Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky. We have a large layout that we travel with, and at those times, and we'll exhibit our models. We actually operate. It's a layout that has 300 feet of running track on it. And in fact, in case we were up in Cleveland this summer for the National Model Railroad Show, we had one of the feature layouts up there. But we will put on seminars and everything with people and sit down and work with them, where they'll ask you about how did you build a certain item, and then that opens the door. And you sit down with them and you kind of go through how, let's say, a wagon was built and why that wagon was chosen and what it belongs to and what would be the history behind it. And you just have to get yourself involved to the point that you visualize an item and then you can build it. But there's, I belong to another organization where plans are available for a lot of these items. The New York Central Historical Society, which I'm also a member of, and I have several good friends in there, that they have plans available for all kinds of things that you can get, especially for modelers. Modelers will start with kits. Then they'll find something that they really like and you can't buy it in a kit. So then you begin to improvise. And that's half the fun of modeling. When you can take something that's not available off the shelf for any amount of money and build it, and then set it down and look at it and say, wow, look what I did. And it just builds the enthusiasm and everything, and you decide that, you know, this is a great way to utilize your spare time. It's a good way to develop your thought process on how do you accomplish something. It's almost like working at a job or living, you know. I want to do something. Well, to be able to do that, you have to figure out how you're going to get there. Modeling's the same way. I want to build that building, and how do I start? This is a Lionel consolidated sound, smoke.
approaching.
hopefully. I've got two circus trains in there. The one that's coming out is a more modern one. You will likely see some of these different articles on, say, Ringling Brothers or one of those type of things.
You have any idea how many feet it's at? Is that in that layout at all?
Right here is the most popular scale, the HL scale, and it's most popular in the model railroading world. It's half the size of a O scale, and quite a bit of model railroads, they use this popular scale because of space-wise, you know, when it comes to building a layout. They like the size of the trains, and it gives them more space, you know, to work with. Our next popular scale here is the S scale, which is American Flyer trains. And American Flyer has been around for a long time, since standard gauge pre-war, and then was later bought by A.C. Gilbert of Gilbert Toys, and did away with the pre-war standard and pre-war O-gauge trains, and went with a smaller scale, which is more realistic in detail, and also became more popular than the Lionel trains of the 50s because of their size and authenticity. The HL scale layout has much of Madison County. As you see, like right where the barn is located, we have the town of Alexandria, and over there on the other part of the layout we have Anderson. Then right over there at the Guide Land Plant is Chesterfield, and then we have also we have the town of LaPel, and right in this area at the south end, you know, the other end of the layout is supposed to be South Anderson Yard, or a replica of South Anderson Yard. The next popular scale is the O scale, or Lionel trains. As you see here, Lionel trains has been in business for over 114 years, founded by Joshua Lionel Cowan, who created the first Lionel train set, which is like a simple battery-operated car, you know, locomotive with some cars, you know, that's operated on a special type of battery pack, and two rail tracks. They were meant to be used as a store display, but they became so popular, people were buying them from the stores directly, you know, thinking this a toy or something that their little boys would love to play with. Lionel has become very popular throughout the years, starting with the standard gauge pre-war train sets, or the big die-cast metal train sets, and especially like the locomotives that are so big it takes almost like two people to lift it up, you know, to lift it and put it on a set of tracks. And it takes up the whole entire floor. You know, like if you build a big layout, it takes up an entire floor. And of course, O scale is popular. About like 1 in 10 model railroaders do this, you know, work with this type of scale. And now the technology has evolved to make Lionel much popular today, you know, amongst O scalers, with all the detailing and authenticity of their trains. The next popular scale amongst model railroaders is the N scale. As you can see here, the N scale is about about the palm of my hand right here, the size of my hand here, which could fit on here, and The reason why it's that small is it's more flexible, for space-wise, where you can build a big layout, having like say several different cities, maybe a couple of classification yards, and a whole lot more you could work with. When I first got started, I started out with a Lionel train set myself at between age 5 and 6. I started out with a Lionel set, and then around age 6, I started out with a HL scale. My uncle gave me his Tyco train set. My Lionel was out of commission because I wore out the tracks and everything because I played with my trains just about every day, and built my first 4x8 layout at age 6. And I was gradually adding on until one night the layout met its early demise. A certain family member destroyed my layout, so I was about to say scrap the layout anyway and rebuild and expand it where I could have multi-train operation, but that was sidelined for a long time until a few years ago I decided to build my second layout when I had the space for one. But we're up here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 6 to 8. And we're up here running trains. Some of us in the club, we bring in stuff from our own collections because we like to break them in, run them on layout, see how they function. Because of course, some of us, reason why we joined the Model Rebel Club is that some of us probably don't have the room for a layout. I mean, we may have the room to buy the trains and such, but probably don't have the room for a layout, and that's why many of us join, and some of us want to share a common interest, which is the hobby itself. And we share like ideas on scenery and weathering and building the trains and this and that, and kind of updating ourselves on a lot of the new technology that's coming out.